Ooh, how fun.
Good morning, KPFK listeners, and welcome to Health for Us. I'm your host, Erica Ferriston, here with co-host Gina Viola. Together, we are co-chair of Healthcare for Us, a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization fighting for healthcare as a human right in California and the larger fight for healthcare justice in the nation. Our program delivers the latest on healthcare policy and reveals that America's medical insurance isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, which is to be costly and deadly. So, what's the solution, you ask? Well, the solution is to abolish insurance companies and replace them with a single-payer healthcare system that will save your life and your bank account. Today, we're talking with Maebe A Girl, local drag queen and Silver Lake neighborhood council person, trans rights, and the state of gender affirming care for Los Angeles Hospital. I kind of messed that up, but we're talking with Maebe about those things. So anyway, get comfortable, not too comfortable if you're driving. Stay tuned and let's jump in.
Before we dive in, a quick reminder, the views expressed on this program are solely those of myself, Erica, and our guest. They do not necessarily reflect those of KPFK or the Pacifica Foundation. So as we start each and every show, we give you a reminder about what single-payer healthcare is. It is sometimes referred to as Medicare for all. It is the complete removal of the health insurance industry. It is long past time that we eliminate the middleman from our healthcare. You keep your doctors and the government pays the bills. It's that simple. So we have some newsworthy items to discuss this morning in Drop Site News. This is something all movement people should be paying attention to. DHS, Department of Homeland Security, detains lead negotiator of Columbia Gaza Solidarity Encampment after online campaign by pro-Israel groups, part of Trump's sweeping attack on the First Amendment. Mahmoud Khalil is a green card holder and his wife is 8 months pregnant. Homeland Security literally followed her into her apartment. There was no knock on the door, no time for her to even assert her rights. So we need to stay vigilant with one another, for each other. This is just the beginning of what I think we're going to see. Go to Drop Site News. It's a great website full of all the up-to-date information on anything related to Gaza, to Israel, to First Amendment. Can't recommend it enough. In the LA Progressive, War and Peace cuts in Veterans Affairs jobs. Thanks to Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, called DOGE, the VA now faces disruption of its healthcare delivery, data security, and stable employment for 100,000 former service members.
Yeah, there was an Army veteran and VA patient, Ricardo Ortiz, who spoke out against this. And he, in a crowd of 300 people, he talked about the struggle of working class vets to create a healthcare system based on public provision of care, not for-profit medical treatment, and pointing out that this achievement is now at risk with the bipartisan support to privatize the VA-run Veterans Health Administration. The closest
so we're going to lose the one single payer system we do have. The Veterans Affairs is currently a single payer system. The government does pay those bills. Private insurance hasn't gotten in there yet, but along with everything else, Donald Trump is going to do his best to privatize the VA as well. So, and then just this morning, Erin in the Morning, it's a wonderful newsletter. Erin Reed does everything related to trans care, trans peoples, and we have some good news for a change. The new German, Austrian, and Swiss guidelines mark a significant advancement for transgender healthcare in those countries, reinforcing a growing trend in Europe toward expanding, not restricting, access to gender-affirming care. They join the ranks of nations like Spain and France, which have taken more progressive stances on transgender rights, including medical care. More importantly, they dismantle the false narrative that Europe is pulling back on transgender care. In reality, it's the United States that stands an outlier with its regressive policies, placing it far to the right of much of the Western world.
Thank you, Gina, for those news headlines. You are tuned in to Healthcare for Us on 90.7 FM, KPFK Los Angeles, also streaming live at kpfk.org.
So we are so excited to have joining us today in the studio, Maebe A Girl. Maebe became the first drag queen elected to public office in the U.S. when she was elected to the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council in 2019. They are currently serving their third term on the council as at-large representative and treasurer. They also ran for Congress in California's 30th congressional district, coming in second place out of 9 candidates in 2022. That was Maebe's seat, and became the first openly trans, non-binary candidate to advance to a general election for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. Maebe hosts, produces, and performs in drag shows around LA, and they are currently working as the operations manager for SELA, Neighborhood Homeless Coalition. Welcome, Maebe.
Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you, Erica, for having me. Excited to be here with y'all.
Thank you so much, Maebe, for coming on. Well, the first question I have is, what is transgender? For those who may not be familiar or feeling confused, spell it out for us.
Yeah, so, trans people, first of all, I want to say trans people are people. First and foremost, we are all human beings. And I think that people who are cisgender, which means that they identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth, often have a misunderstanding about what it means to be trans. I think sometimes when you don't have an understanding of an experience, it can seem very foreign to you and very confusing. And sometimes you can confuse that with this idea that, that it's wrong. Here's the thing. Everybody comes from different backgrounds, different experiences. Trans people, essentially what a trans person is, it means that you do not identify with the gender that you were assigned at birth. Some people are trans binary, which means, they were assigned male at birth and they transition to female or vice versa. And then some people are trans non-binary, which means they don't really neatly fit into any sort of box. I think as humans, we try to categorize everything into binaries for easier understanding, but very few things in the world are actually black or white, yes or no, this or that. Trans non-binary people fit somewhere either in between the gender binary or outside of the gender binary. And for some transgender people, it's not even fixed. Some people are gender fluid, meaning, one day they might feel internally a little more male or feel a little more female, or neither, or both. And so I can see why that might be confusing to somebody who is cisgender. But again, I just want to remind everybody that we are human beings just living our truths. People who are just, wanting to exist in society and be accepted for who we are.
Thank you so much for that, Maebe.
That was such a great definition. I felt that deeply. I connected to things, even for somebody who is the mother of a trans child, you would think I have my head around it, but even new things clicked for me in what you just said. So thank you for that, Maebe.
Absolutely.
Would you mind sharing a little bit of your personal experience in coming into your identity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of have two coming out stories. I initially came out as gay when I was a teenager to my parents. I was very fortunate to have a loving, accepting family. And I can tell you that made me a confident human being ready to go out and tackle the world. So many young people, when they come out to their families, their friends, their loved ones, unfortunately are rejected. I mean, that's why you see when you look at the number of queer youth experiencing homelessness, about 40% of unhoused youth identify as LGBTQIA+, and a big reason of that is familial rejection. So I was really lucky to come out in a supportive environment, and this was a while ago. This was in the early 2000s when you didn't really see a lot of queer representation anywhere. You didn't see rainbow flags. You didn't see queer people represented in the media. I mean, I basically had Will and Grace and Queer as Folk. And, I had to sort of hide that I was watching that before I came out. So I came out initially as a gay person. And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I realized that I was a transgender person. My awakening, if you will, sort of arose from when I started to do drag. And this is a fairly common story for a number of trans people. When I started doing drag about 10, 11, 12 years ago, I started to realize that it didn't feel like a costume to me. It felt like an actual expression of my gender. And so, I would do a show and then I would realize all my fellow performers are in the green room, taking off their wigs, taking off their makeup, their heels. And I just wanted to keep it on. And that sort of made me start to consider, what does this mean? And so really it was through drag that I realized that I'm a trans person. And so everybody has a different story. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way to be trans. And I think that's important to consider. I think, again, we always try to put people into boxes, but everyone has their own journey and their own way of getting to where they are today.
Thank you for sharing that. It's always impactful to hear people's personal stories, and we appreciate your being willing to share that with everyone here in the KPFK audience. I'd like to talk a little bit about what's been going on at Children's Hospital, right? The Thursday rallies that have been happening. And, more specifically, if we had CalCare, if that had passed last year, the single payer healthcare bill for California, would we even need these rallies? So,
Well, Gina, do you want to recap for people what is going on at Children's Hospital?
Oh, I would hope Maebe would do that. I've only been there once. I think Maebe's been there every time.
I have, yeah. So we started protesting at Children's Hospital a little more than a month ago. And at first it seems a little wild to, think about protesting a children's hospital. Why would anybody do that? And the only reason that we are doing that is because Children's Hospital LA is not living up to our community standards of providing equal access to healthcare. I don't really like the term access to healthcare because I think it's sort of a dog whistle. But this is actually access to healthcare. You have certain people who are able to access surgeries. You have other certain people, transgender people, who are now no longer able to access surgeries. So it really is actually an access issue. So we started protesting because Children's Hospital LA preemptively complied with Donald Trump's executive order to ban gender-affirming healthcare for people under 19 years old. That means 18-year-olds. These are adults. These are people that can go off and fight in a war for U.S. imperialist interests, but they can't make their own autonomous healthcare decisions. That is totally whack. That is totally zany. It's un-American, to be frank. And so what's really troublesome about Children's Hospital LA deciding to preemptively comply with this executive order, because mind you, executive orders are not law. Executive orders cannot create laws. They can only enforce existing laws. So when you have major institutions deciding preemptively to go along with these executive orders, first of all, it's really scary because what it does is it shows the Trump administration exactly what they can and cannot get away with. And that's really scary, because they can just, what are they just going to keep coming out with these executive orders and we're just going to be like, oh, okay, sure. So it's scary in the sense of what it could continue to lead to. But just this idea that here in Los Angeles, which is considered to be one of the most progressive areas in the entire nation, and we've got Children's Hospital LA denying healthcare to transgender youth. So that's really the main reason why we are protesting. So what they did was they decided to halt taking on new patients for HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, for puberty blockers, and for surgeries. They actually canceled surgeries for new and existing patients, but they weren't taking on any new patients whatsoever. And so we went out and we protested. I showed up at the first protest, which was actually organized by DSA LA. And after it was over, I was meeting so many people there, and we said, is this it? We have to come back. You can't just show up once and expect your demands to be met. And so I helped to organize with a few other, well, basically we call ourselves an autonomous, decentralized group of queer neighbors and allies. We are just everyday, regular people wanting to help our neighbors. And so we decided to organize and keep showing up on Thursdays. And our crowd kept growing, and security at the hospital kept growing. Cops started showing up as predicted. But we did end up seeing something that was really hopeful. CHLA, after our third protest, actually made a hospital-wide decision that they were going to continue taking on new patients for HRT and puberty blockers. This was a huge success. I mean, I can't tell you the number of protests I've been to, and nothing actually happens. This is a prime example of how community pressure and protesting actually can work if you organize and you keep at it. Like I said, you can't just show up once and expect your demands to be met, but you keep showing up and you keep being a nuisance, and you are going to get them to abide by your community standards. But this was not a total success. They still have decided not to permit surgeries for new or existing patients. So I don't know if they thought that was going to stop us from protesting, but we are continuing to protest the hospital. We are asking people to join us, to show up, to call the hospital, to write the board. And I also want to be clear that our beef is not with the healthcare providers or the employees of CHLA. It is with the higher ups who are making these decisions, the ones that are profiting the most from healthcare, from people's health, people's lives. So that's who we're protesting, and we're going to continue to protest. We hope you will join us.
Yeah, I just want to say really quickly, thank you. I love that neighbors and allies. I feel like it creates space for me to show up and join. And I've noticed that in a lot of movements calling on neighbors and allies. So thank you for being so inclusive. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Gina, I know.
Yeah, I think you have, well, I just want to say the script you wrote or somebody wrote to call the hospital with, I think is part of the reason why they retracted as quickly as they did and started, resuming some care, because the script was great. And getting those calls by, from a multitude of people. So I love that you had that at the rally. And I think, not only is the consistency important, because you're right, a one-off is not going to make change, but the fact that you were giving us marching orders and something to do to engage in that beyond just being out there that night. I think you have a testimonial from a family member out there that you wanted to
I do.
share
Yes.
with us.
When we were, we started doing these protests, we wanted to make sure that we were centering the people most impacted by the hospital's policies, which are patients first and foremost, and their families. And so we had a number of parents and trans youth write to us and say, hey, I'd love for my testimonial to be spoken at the protest. And so I wanted to share one of these. It's anonymous. I'm not going to be sharing any names, but I wanted to share this because I think, we always hear about the numbers in these situations. We have to remember these are human beings. These are real life people, our neighbors that are being impacted. So this is from a parent who has a child at CHLA. Our son has been in the gender affirming care program at CHLA ever since he came out to us nearly 6 years ago. We are extraordinarily grateful for the thoughtful, medically appropriate care he has received over the years. It is not an understatement to say this care saved his life. Last summer, we scheduled an appointment for a consultation regarding top surgery, and our son was over the moon excited at the prospect. Our appointment couldn't take place until March of this year, an indication of how in-demand CHLA services are. We've been counting the days until we could take his first important step toward a surgery that we know would tremendously ease the gender dysphoria he experiences on a daily basis. But on February 5th, we received a phone call saying the appointment was canceled and would not be rescheduled. We were not given an explanation and told we would not be able to access this care for years until our son was 19. We have called and asked for explanations, but have been given none. Some have reported that this change to the surgery program happened months ago. If so, we have no idea why we weren't notified. It seems especially cruel to tell a child for years that he would be able to access this life-affirming treatment and then suddenly deny care. We commend CHLA for making the right decision to prescribe puberty blockers and hormonal therapy in the face of opposition from those sorely lacking in understanding in the science and extensive research supporting this care. We fear that by denying surgery, the hospital is setting itself up to deny other forms of gender-affirming care at the drop of a hat. CHLA's motto is, "We create hope and build healthier futures." Please don't shatter hope for our children. Please continue to build healthier futures by continuing to provide care that brings harm to none and joy and freedom to so many.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that. Have they rescheduled his surgery? Do you know?
Not that I know of. And actually, I can tell you no, because the hospital itself has canceled all surgeries for new and existing trans people 18 years of age and younger. So again, it's just, putting actual stories to what is happening, I think is really important to do because, you read the headlines, you hear the numbers, but every single trans person has a story and they deserve to be told. They deserve to, be able to live their lives the way that they want to.
That's another wonderful thing about coming together every week is giving people the mic to be able to do that. I know I heard several stories when I was out there, and I'll be out there with you this coming Thursday. So do you want to talk to us a little bit about your previous run for Congress and I saw you centering Medicare for all. That's what caught my attention right away when you were running.
Absolutely. So when I first ran for my local seat in early 2019, I think everybody's fear of running is that you're going to run and then election day comes and goes and you have one vote and it's the one vote you cast for yourself. So I was really very pleasantly surprised that I won my election to the neighborhood council. And it was really exciting because people didn't vote for me because I'm a drag queen. People didn't vote for me because I'm a trans person. They voted for me because of the ideas that I wanted to bring to my neighborhood, to my city. And, the more I thought about it, I was like, well, I'm in a position where we don't actually have any legislative authority. Neighborhood councils are, they act as advisory boards to city councils. So we make very local decisions. We can influence city policy. We can give out neighborhood purpose grants to local schools and nonprofits. But I wanted to make bigger changes. I looked at some of the problems in our society and you see the same things everywhere. You see people not being able to afford anything. So a big part of my campaign was this idea of economic equity, where I've always thought if people were guaranteed healthcare, housing, and education, it would be an incredible place, an incredible world for everybody. And that's really where you get to see people thrive. People cannot thrive when they are trying to survive, when they are worrying about how they're going to pay a medical bill, how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to pay for school. And it sort of stalls the opportunity for what we can be as human beings collectively. We've heard of this idea of trickle-down economics. Well, I believe in trickle-up economics, where you take care of everybody at the bottom and people are going to be productive. It's going to be good for the economy. It's going to be good for neighborhoods, cities, states. It's going to be good for people in general. And that's really what we should be doing, is taking care of each other. And I cannot stand when I bring forth these ideas and, critics, especially anybody who's to the right of me, the big question is, well, how are we going to pay for it? And what I loathe about that question is I never hear that question when, we're signing off on a nearly $1 trillion Pentagon bill every single year. But there's never any money left over for healthcare, housing, or education. And, the fact of the matter is, if we guarantee these things, it would be cheaper for everybody. I think people have this fear that their tax dollars are going to be paying for somebody else's healthcare. And that's not how it works in a fiat nation like the United States. We have the money to take care of people. This is the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. And we can't give people healthcare? I mean, come on.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Maebe. And to your point, and from what I understand, one of the reasons why Children's Hospital preemptively decided not to give gender affirming care was for fear that they would lose their federal dollars. And we had a bill, CalCare, that would have impacted this really quickly in about a minute. Could you speak to that, because you were a huge supporter of CalCare, which we appreciate?
Absolutely. I mean, I will say this. One of the things I love about California is we are national trendsetters. You see something happening in California, you're eventually going to see it happening everywhere else. So if there is a state for universal health care to start in, it is California. I mean, we are the richest states by, everything that we produce here. We produce half the fruits and vegetables that are consumed in the US. We have all of our ports of trade. There's so much money in this state. Spread it around to everybody so that we can have healthcare. And it really disappoints me that we have a super majority of Democrats in the California state legislature, and yet the bill for universal healthcare was killed. And, it pisses me off so much that I think next time I'm going to be running for a state position. I lost my congressional race, and while that was disappointing, I think about, had I won, what sort of things could I actually do, when the House, the Senate, and the presidency are all under Trump right now. But if I was to get a state position, that's where actually I can make a difference. And I have no problem calling out my colleagues who are against things like universal health care. So I think that we need very vocal people in our state office to be able to actually see something like this happen. I'm confident that the people of California want universal health care. And so who knows, you might see me on your ballot for state Senate in 2026.
And where can people find out more information about your work?
You can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram. It's at Maebe A Girl. That's MAEBE AGIRL. I also want to encourage y'all to follow our protest group, which is Protect Trans Youth LA. That's on Instagram as well. You can follow us, find out about upcoming calls to action, upcoming protests. Also, we're going to be voting on a resolution that I introduced to the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council at the beginning of April. It's a resolution to declare Silver Lake a safe haven for transgender individuals, and a call to action for City Council and the LA County Board of Supervisors to take legislative action against hospitals that are denying healthcare for transgender people. So I know I just said a lot of info, but you can always follow me on Instagram. You can follow Protect Trans Youth LA, Maebe A Girl, and I'd love to connect and see how we can build a better world together.
Thank you, Maebe. So grateful that we had you on today, and hopefully you'll come back. We've got some actions to talk about. I've got a little frog in my throat. Erica, you want to take it?
Sure, yes. Black women are divine. It is happening this Sunday, March 16th, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Norman Houston Park. Healthcare for Us is going to be speaking all about single payer at the Grassroots Coalition Building Workshop on Sunday, March 23rd. At 1 p.m. at CWA Local 9003 in Burbank. Details for these events are found on our website calendar at HC4US.org. We're also going to add in the protests happening every Thursday at Children's Hospital, so you can find out more information there. Also on our HC for Us homepage and under the Take Action tab, you will find the People's Budget Survey. What is the People's Budget Survey? It is a survey created by Black Lives Matter Los Angeles to help your voice be counted in the shaping of a city budget that truly reflects the needs of our communities. So check that out. All the articles mentioned in today's show, that's also on our website at HC4US.org. And please follow us on all the socials at HC4US_org. Thank you again to our guest, Maebe A Girl, Smiley Tea in the Tall Trees for our theme song. Tech producer Scott Peak, Sheila Bates, Taiji Miyagawa, Jackie Hernandez, Dennis Resendez, Carol Fodera, and the entire team at Healthcare for Us that makes this show possible. Healthcare for Us airs every Friday at 7:30 a.m. Next week, tune in to hear from your host, Taiji Miyagawa. Stay tuned for Democracy Now! And remember, single payer is the solution. Join
the
healthcare
healthcare revolution.